Hello, everyone. We're here for another episode of the Brockton Bay Chronicles. I'm Keith. I'm back once again with my trusty sidekick, Andy. We're charting his way through Wildbow's insane world of capes, teenage warlords, and giant flying beetles. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty well, considering I didn't see any giant flying beetles. I'm very happy about that. I think that would give me nightmares. But yeah, doing pretty good. This episode, we'll be reviewing Arc 14, Prey, chapters 1 through 5. As far as new business, just a reminder, Arc 14 review will be 3 parts. And we have some really great input from YouTube.
We do. We're going to begin with a rather lengthy comment from a new contributor, Freak Circus. I cherry picked out some of the sections that we wanted to discuss. And then he did have a question. So this is what Freak Circus has to offer. When it comes to detecting and manipulating emotions, Cherish's sensory range is much bigger than her offensive range. It's how she can track someone's emotional signature even when they're on the other side of Brockton Bay. As for Gru's power borrowed in that scene, the healing was from Othala. Her shtick is that she can grant temporary powers to others. The self-regeneration was, of course, from Crawler. That also means that Brian's body should be more resilient now. My question would be, whose power do you consider to be the scariest so far? And if you had that power, would you find ways to use it in a non-harmful way, or just try to not use it at all?
I know this might sound like I'm kind of going back on what I said before, but I'm sticking with Mannequin is still the creepiest one of the 9 for me. But as far as the scariest power, I would have to go with Bonesaw. Just the way that she can figure out how to put things together, how to take things apart, but they're not things, they're people. Yeah, that whole scene with Gru is just still etched into my brain, unfortunately. So yeah, as far as not using it or using it in a non-harmful way, I would think there'd be tons of ways to do that. I mean, just the idea of transplants. That would be a great way to use this. You know, theoretically, if she can get stuff to go together, she'd be able to figure out a way to make donor heart from the dude that just died work with the person who needs the heart now, whether there was a perfect match or not. I would think she'd be able to, use her power for that.
Mm-hmm.
And, on a total weird side note, in the realm of self-driving cars, they're estimating that if even, I think, like 50% on the cars of the road become self-driving, then donor organs will drop to a dangerously low level because the majority of them come from traffic fatalities.
Oh, wow.
And so then they're going to have this whole other problem on their hands because of self-driving cars, which is just bizarre. But anyway, I digress.
Interesting side note there. Our next contribution comes from Megafire 7. When it comes to letting Crawler run into Sundancer's son, sure, that might kill him, but if it doesn't, you've just made him stronger. Do you really want to make him that powerful? Also, Trickster's plan is certainly less well thought out than Skitter's was, and so it goes much, much worse. Anyway, we get Bonesaw's understanding of powers here, and I'm very interested in hearing more about your theories in that regard. Taylor's conversation with Brian shows some of Taylor's worst tendencies, I feel, because she is just entirely unable to deal with Brian's criticism. Some of it is badly delivered, sure, but there's a core point in there, and Taylor's response is just, well, then maybe I should go, which is just not reckoning with things at all. Why don't you take any section you feel like responding to there? Megafire threw a lot at us.
Okay, I'll take that first one. I guess I would I would gamble that it would wipe him out, and that if it made him stronger, that he would just go and try to find an endbringer. He would know that there'd be nothing else that could take him out, so he would just go away. So I think he would realize that he'd be like, "All right,
No, I beat the sun
to challenge me here. Yeah, I beat the sun. Let's see what else. My work here is done, Brockton Bay. Goodbye."
It's a crazy thought.
All right, you want to take one?
Yeah, I was trying to deal with my thoughts on how Taylor responded to Brian. I think Megafire brings up a good point here. I was looking at it from the compassion side here, but Megafire has caused me to think a little bit deeper about the fact that Taylor is not looking. Now I'm wondering if she's not looking objectively enough at how she handled that, as opposed to thinking that, okay, well, I've hurt you, maybe I should go. Maybe she should have done a little more self-reflection and taken the criticism more constructively. I mean, she did at one point. Wasn't she kind of mad at Brian for how he was, I don't want to say attacking her. I mean, he was verbally laying into her, rightly so, given what he'd just gone through. But I think Megafire is bringing up some, kind of making me go, making me think, rethink that possibly.
I think that's a valid point. I feel like I play this card way too often, but Taylor's only 16.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think of what a knucklehead I was at age 16 and how oblivious I could be. I mean, even into my 20s, I was still pretty socially inept. And what I was like when you and I hung out. You had to, I was like the worst guy from Revenge of the Nerds, and you took me under your wing and kind of said, "Come on now, it's okay to come out of your dorm room. You'll be fine. Put down the security blanket." No, okay, it wasn't that bad, but sometimes it felt like that on the inside. I mean, I just felt like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make it through this? This is just not going to work. And I didn't really start feeling confident until probably my mid to late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in hindsight, I agree. Taylor just is like, all right, I'm out.
Right.
But, how often in life when we don't have a strategy to do something and we just can't wrap our head around something, are we tempted to bail out? It's really hard when you don't have the strategies to deal with something,
mm-hmm.
and you can't figure out a way to deal with it, to not just say, I'm going to jet. I'm at a total loss right now. And some couples therapies even say that you should do that. If you get to the point where you're so angry or you're so confused about something, either person should be able to say, you know what, I need an hour timeout.
Mm-hmm.
I call timeout because right now I'm worried I'm going to say something that's not going to be helpful. So let's just step away for an hour. But when I didn't know any of that stuff when I was 16, I was just like a gibbering idiot. So I think Taylor was way ahead of where I would have been. I probably would have had the world's largest ant farm, out in one of those derelict buildings, and just stayed out there and played with it the whole time and let the world burn.
Oh gosh. Nice. And our final comment is from Felix Rowe. And this was kind of a funny one. Part of me wants to say that Arc 13 is where expletive deleted really hits the fan. But then again, I feel like that can be said about almost every arc in Worm. And as someone who's already been through this story once, yeah, I'm going to agree with that pretty pretty soundly. You're at arc 14 now. What do you think?
I heartily agree with that as well. And I think that's the sign of a well-written thing, right? Is that, well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe a modern, well-written thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think back to movies like before Raiders of the Lost Ark, and there were, scenes that were just kind of people kind of getting connected, or people doing this or
Mm-hmm.
people doing that, and then there'd be something. And then Raiders, it just seemed like one thing after another. It's just like nonstop action. And then, Transformers, all of them have just kind of ratcheted it up. And
Yeah.
so this has a sense of that. And that's good because you want, people have gotten used to kind of all right, I'm getting on the roller coaster ride. I'm opening up the book. I want to just be either ramping up to a point where I'm going to be screaming on a downhill, or I want to be screaming on a downhill. And so I like it. But yeah, you wonder then when it's like, okay, that scene with Gru in 13 was really bad. How much worse can it get?
Yeah. But I think also as you mentioned the roller coaster analogy, I think it makes because of the way the story is written, it makes the quieter moments, I appreciate them more.
Mm.
I mean, yeah, the scene with Gru and Taylor in the previous arc where he was berating her. Yeah, that was rough to see from his point of view. But some dangerous cape slash monster wasn't chasing him. This was an interpersonal thing, and I think we both commented on how much we really like the interpersonal relationships and stories as they've unfolded.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, they're real brief things in the Marvel universe. I still crack myself up now from the first Avengers movie when Thor meets Iron Man, and Iron Man calls him Point Break.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, I about fell out of my seat in the theater when he said that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not near enough of that in the Marvel stuff, and in this there is a lot more. Wildbow takes those times away to build character and build relationship, and yeah, I find that very valuable.
Well, thank you everyone for your feedback and contributions this week. Keep them coming, folks. They really get our brains turning the story over, and it helps us really think outside the box and reconsider some of our positions, which is always
Mm.
good. And we begin our review. We start here, Arc 14, Chapter 1, and the team is still in Gru's place. It's the next morning. They're trying to gather themselves after a night's sleep. Alec and Aisha are around, rummaging around in the kitchen, making noise. Taylor was still sitting next to Gru. She apparently fell asleep and rested her head on his arm. Brian didn't get any sleep. He's still trying to cope, and he's still in a rough way.
Yeah, I don't know, what must be going through his head, but to have a second trigger event is bad enough, and then to have this event in such a way that he started experiencing other things, and we don't know to what extent he did. How one of the comments kind of touched on it, that the self-healing being borrowed from Crawler, how much of Crawler's other kind of side effects or side attributes propagated over to Brian as well. So, and then yeah, what that must be doing to his brain too.
You speculated about him possibly pulling over people's emotional selves in that. Do you still hold to that? When he was borrowing their
Yeah,
powers, you still think
yeah,
so?
I think so, because the way he attacked Burn Scar,
Mm-hmm.
that was a very Siberian kind of move, to just crush her head like that. And so, he had all sorts of training, right? Why didn't
Yeah.
he just knock her out with a punch or karate kick her or whatever? He did a very kind of, so yeah, I think there was some bleed over. And, talking about the Bonesaw mentioning the passenger, does he have multiple passengers now, or does he have a passenger that's talked to other passengers? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. It's so there could be all sorts of, yeah, kind of bleed over. And yeah, I would think it's, never having done it before, just seeing it in movies, but when people go on hallucinogenic trips, I would think it'd be like trying to integrate that, but
Mm-hmm.
kind of like on steroids, trying to piece all that together. Well, where do I end and this other thing start? And was that me or not me?
Right. Aisha is not happy with Taylor. She when Taylor goes into the kitchen to try to rummage up some coffee and maybe start getting some breakfast going for herself and Brian, she runs into Alec and Aisha, and Aisha's being the protective sibling here, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And to harken back to that one comment earlier from Megafire 7, you know, to a certain extent, all of them are still trying to process through what happened, right? They were
Mm-hmm.
all as good as dead. I
Right.
mean, not just, oh, I could have died in that fight. It was like they were stacked like cordwood. This was this was going to be the end for everybody. Oh, except for Gru, who was, strung out like piano wire in the back room. But
Yeah.
and so, it's one thing to, wow, that was a close one in the fight, or, I broke some stuff. I'm in a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
But to just be flat out like, yeah, I don't see how we're ever going to get out of this. So what typically happens then is people will start sliding back into their default behaviors. And so, Taylor gets kind of fine, nobody wants me, I'll just leave.
Mm-hmm.
Gru gets, kind of extra grumbly. Although he did okay kind of trying to bounce back from it. Aisha is going to go back into, just protective sister mode. I'm sure she had to do that, or felt like she needed to do that, maybe even before they got powers. But the point is that we typically under stress go back to our default behaviors and sometimes don't even remember things like, hey, Aisha, you're alive because I came in to try to save y'all. So how about cut me a little slack? But they're all just still, yeah, discombobulated by the experience, I think. And so this is a pretty jarring sequence all the way around almost. Lisa's the only one that kind of seems, her usual self. But
Did you catch that sidebar, those comments from Alec? And even Taylor noticed and wondered if he might be sticking up for her a little bit in this instance, where this is where Aisha was complaining that
right.
Skitter was trying to take advantage of Brian's being out of his normal self and to using that to get close to him. And Brian's, pardon me, Alec is like, nah, hey, I'm sure he didn't mind. And Taylor was kind of surprised by that defense, or what she presumed was him defending her a little bit.
Yeah, Alec is so backhanded in the way he tries to come around to something like a compliment,
Right.
or trying to say something encouraging. But, given his background and the stuff that he's done
Mm-hmm.
and the age he did it at, I'm sure there were times where he was as messed up as Gru is and everybody else is right now, wondering how evil he was or whatever, and realizing that, sometimes at that point you need to just have basic companionship. It's not about trying to make anything more of it. It's just like you said, somebody lying next to you in bed.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a comforting thing. It's a stabilizing factor.
The team gets together after everybody gathers some breakfast. The travelers, they come around, fix themselves a meal. Bitch and Tattletale come back in from patrol, and they sit down to start mapping out what next moves are they going to do. Oh, yeah, I don't want to skip this part. Rachel asked Taylor if she meant what she said the previous night. Taylor's response is, hey, yeah, I meant it. I risked my life to save you. And, Rachel didn't know how to handle that. And Taylor's like, hey, just do what you think is right. I'll have your back. You do what you think is right. How's Taylor doing managing her relationship with Rachel now?
It's hard to say. The part that preceded this, though, I think feeds into it too, where it's kind of revealed that the wolf bastard is actually a wolf that was a gift from Siberian. And so then everybody's like, what?
Yes.
What's the heck? What's going on with that? But they kind of talk around it. And then Taylor has to say, but you'd want to know for sure, right, that it's not somehow tampered with.
Right.
And, Rachel, of course, goes Rachel and, thinks that everybody's just out to get her. But she doesn't get as defensive and super mean as she usually does. And it's because of this comment that Taylor made. And Rachel needs to know what the deal was with that. And so I think Taylor's doing a little bit better job with it, not kind of letting herself get wound up about it, realizing that, all right, Rachel's just using her usual, oh, those are just words. It's like, well, yeah, that's how beings communicate, not letting it get to her. But I'm thinking that from the pack mentality standpoint, Rachel would kind of get it that, sure, if you're part of the pack, then you're going to defend the pack. That makes sense.
Right.
But if a wolf, and this, I hope any paleontologists will correct me, or botanists or whatever, I don't know what biologists, but if a wolf pack was getting attacked by a bear,
mm-hmm.
and some lone wolf saw that, I would think the lone wolf would come in and fight the bear. I don't think it would just like let the wolves go down. So I could be totally wrong on that. I don't know. But I think Rachel's starting to think, all right, well, maybe we aren't all part of the same pack, but we're all part of the same species. We're all gonna kind of have each other's back to a certain extent. But she's having trouble accepting that. But she at least seems to be kind of open to it. So
as they are sitting there mapping out their next move, they try to dissect. This is where Lisa begins to dissect what power Gru was gleaning from everyone. And this is where they come to the realization that the monochromed figure, the pseudo Brian, was a projection from his use of Siberian's power. Did you see that coming?
I did not. No, that was a big surprise. It kind of makes sense in hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
It explains a lot of things, but yeah, I didn't see that one coming.
Do you think that? How do you like that as a story element? That this realization that this unstoppable force is actually a projection.
I think it's pretty cool. It seems like it could definitely be OP, as my son says. It could be overpowering,
mm-hmm.
and could throw off the game mechanics, so to speak, to where, well, how do you stop it? But the way you stop a projection is you turn off the projector. So enter phase 2 of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, and that's where that comes in, where they try to discover, hey,
Right.
who's creating this thing? Maybe we should be trying to attack that person.
Yeah. So as far as a power though, that's pretty it seems like you could really make it to where that you're pretty much invincible because like the I can't remember, was it Oni Lee who could do
Mm-hmm.
the teleporting?
Right, and leave a
Uh,
momentary
yeah,
copy of himself.
but leaving that part of himself drain, started taking part of him away
Right.
basically. He was literally leaving a part of his brain or psyche
Mm-hmm.
or something behind. And so if there were some drawback to that, like with Siberian, then that would make sense. And maybe we'll find out that the guy in the van is, a husk of a person basically because he's pumping so much power into Siberian. But
Interesting.
otherwise, it's going to be way out of balance, I think. And I think Gru is going to be, if he doesn't integrate things, I could see him getting really scary.
The team decides to talk to Cherish, and that's where they get confirmation that about Siberian being a projection and having a real body. This was a pretty dangerous move. Lisa was very clever in. I did like her use of the book, the magazine, as a way to determine if people in the group had secrets that they needed to keep.
Yeah,
That was pretty good.
that was cool. I like that too. I hadn't heard of that kind of thing, but that was a good way to figure it out.
And she determined using her powers, like, hey, after Cherish bulks at the initial proposal, Tattletale divines, hey, look, this is how our group would see things, and travelers, this is how your group would see things, and maybe we can still get what we need from Cherish if the travelers are outside of the room. And that was all Cherish wanted, really, was just to be able to mess with their heads.
Mm.
Yeah, she gave him the information, but then she tries to call out her brother and try to get inside his head and try to mess with Gru. Bitch wasn't having any of it and said next time she saw Cherish, she was going to punch her teeth down her throat or something like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah. It's
I'm sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought. Go ahead.
well, yeah. Cherish deals in or peddles secrets, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, and she assumes that everybody's gonna try to keep everything from everybody, or there's always going to be some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't really reckon with the undersiders having shared quite a bit already, and at the point where they are okay if other stuff comes out because they figure it's not going to be that bad. So
Yeah. And she does give Cherish does give them a hint that Siberian is on the hunt. And the undersiders and the travelers realize that she's going after Panacea, and they've got to go out there to try to save her. And this takes us into chapter 2, in what can, I think, the proper adjective to describe this scenario was just terrifying, where Siberian is chasing Amy Dallin for her life.
yeah, total cat and mouse. It's pretty creepy. I hadn't really seen that kind of thing before, but we have a bunch of feral cats in the neighborhood, and we got some, little ground squirrels or gophers or something in the yards around us. And I saw one of them catch one of them and then
Mm.
let it run a little bit and then pounce on it again. Yeah, I was like, that's just horrible. So I went out and chased the cat away. I don't know if the other thing survived, but at least it didn't get toyed with anymore. But to just have, be something so tiny and insignificant and underpowered being chased by an unstoppable force with evil intent.
Yeah, and the whole cat and mouse chasing, letting go, catching, biting off a finger.
Yeah.
Again, Wildbow dipping into the body horror a little bit. I think Yeah, ramping up the terror. That was, if that was his intent, yeah, he got me.
Definitely. Now, I didn't really think of it until right now, but since Siberian is projection, it's not really cannibalism.
True.
So that takes some of the terror away from me, but it's still losing a finger. That's that's pretty grim.
Yes. Um, this was this was really good. She's running wildly. Siberian is stalking her. The Undersiders and company are trying to position themselves where they can come in, swoop in, and save Amy. At first, when Skitter's creating those swarm clones around her, or yeah, around Amy, she, in her freaked out mental state, begins to put the kibosh on her power, and then creating those that feedback loop, and was messing with and diminishing Skitter's power.
Yeah, it's Panacea is just totally terrorized, so she's just striking out at anything, even people that are trying to help her. So that's unfortunate, but they finally kind of start getting through to her, and that helps.
It would have been much better or easier if they had a mannequin, as Skitter was thinking to herself. It would have been nice if they'd had one of those mannequins that Trickster could have used to swap Amy out with, and then they would have been able to just kind of escape. But they were under a time constraint. They didn't have the luxury of trying to put something together.
Yeah, that might have to be something that somehow goes in Skitter's bag of tricks, though. I don't know how she's gonna pull that off. I guess they could stash mannequins on the rooftops all around town or something, but just have these mannequins leaning over the parapet, looking at people and creeping everybody out.
Yeah, so the team is away from Amy, watching through binoculars, trying to look for their opportunity to strike and to try to rescue her. Once they do, it's on. Amy begins to realize that Skitter's clones, swarm clones, the bugs, aren't trying to harm her, and begins to take out the ones that she had disabled, and they helped her try to escape. The scene where Amy's in that building in the mall, and Siberian's walking along next to the building, the adjacent building, raking her hand through the the support structures. Right. That was something.
Yeah, you think, oh well, she'll be all right in there, but nope. Siberian's got a way of dealing with that too. That was pretty innovative. I like the way Wildbow described that.
Meanwhile, while she's doing all this, Skitter's she's the one who's being tasked with trying to find Siberian's real body. She's got her bugs flowing out in the area, scouting out, landing on people trying to eliminate people in the area who may or may not be potential targets. Occasionally, if she thought she saw someone, a guy who might fit the description, she had the bugs bite him, which, I mean, I get it. She's playing hardball here, but I'm sure those people who were victims weren't happy about that.
Yeah, I guess it serves the greater good, but be a bummer to kind of fit the profile and just
suddenly a swarm, swarm descends on you, or even just a few bugs. I mean, she was looking to see if she could get a response from Siberian. I mean, we don't know if that would have worked at this moment, but yeah, if you're guy number 3 on the 3rd floor of the building around the corner, the ants set on you, too bad for you.
Right. I was just sitting here minding my own business. All of a sudden, like a whole hive of stuff came flying in the window and stung the crap out of me. I don't know what's going on.
They do catch up with Amy. Siberian, Taylor's noting how fast she's moving and how she snaps her power out to different items around her, how she doesn't, when she leaps and lands, she doesn't collapse the ground around her. That was pretty cool stuff, how she could extend her power to different inanimate objects, much like when she would jump down from a building carrying her teammates.
Yeah, it's still hard to figure out how the power works. It's almost like God mode in the old game days, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh yeah, you can walk through walls, you can levitate over the lava. It's like what? This doesn't, it just basically turns off physics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to for me to get a handle on how her power works.
Now, what did you think of the conversation, for lack of a better word, that Tattletale has with Siberian? This is where Siberian actually, the team gets to Amy. Siberian shows up and knocks them off their dogs. And Tattletale is like, yeah, just hang on a second. Let me tell you what we're here for. And calmly recites to Siberian what their plan was, stalling her. But I can just imagine in my mind's eye, I can just imagine Tattletale confidently just kind of saying, hey, just hold up a second and listen to me.
Yeah, Tattletale kind of played it pretty well there, but didn't recognize everything that Siberian could do. So, yeah, Siberian is, super confident, and Mannequin was arrogant like that too before people started showing him that he might have a vulnerability. But then, yeah, Tattletale mentions that, oh, the other folks aren't being protected by you now. So
Right.
what? And then bloop, she's gone. And they're like, oh no.
Yeah, that takes us on into chapter 3. She kind of miscalculated just a little bit. She didn't expect that the Siberian would disappear like that to go help the rest of the 9, putting the other group of the assault team, if you will, in danger. Trickster's freaked out about it and is screaming at Tattletale, saying, "Hey, if you put Ballistic in danger, this is just not going to go well for you," and that's understandable from his part.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, they've just seen what Siberian's been doing. And then Trickster is playing the percentage, or Tattletale's playing the percentages,
Mm-hmm.
and misses the role, so to speak. And so then Trickster's like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
what have you done? What have you done?" That could be really bad.
Amy is in shock. Understandably, she's all freaked out. Skitter talks her down a little bit and tries to get her to come out of her hysteria. Tattletale goes to ask her a simple question, and Amy's not having any of it. Snaps at her and, hey, this is all your fault. You're the reason Victoria hates me. My life was good. I could have even handled dealing with Bonesaw showing up in my house if you hadn't gotten inside my head. Yeah, she's got a case.
Yeah, and Taylor's dealt with the same thing, with the bullies she had in school, and then one of them turning out to be a cape. You get that whole nemesis kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, we all kind of long for a nemesis. I think we like to have something that we can blame our problems on,
Mm.
especially when the problems are really bad. It's kind of like, oh well, it's this, and it could be an external environmental thing. It could be a person. It could be, our economic status, whatever. But it's good to be able to put a label on something
Mm-hmm.
sometimes and just say, oh, it's all this bad stuff. And so I think that's why this kind of resonates with us, is that Tattletale is, yeah, the
Easiest target.
exactly, yeah, yeah. And once you start focusing on how you're have negative feelings about someone or something, it's easier and easier to just keep piling on
Mm-hmm.
and saying, "Oh, well, I'll blame you on that too." Blame that on you. Sorry. it snowballs. It's easy for it to just get to where it's kind of out of control, and that's where Amy's at with it.
Amy and Taylor have a talk about, as we were saying, how everything in her life, how she's blaming everything in her life, falling apart on Tattletale and Skitter and them attacking the bank. And she's like, how can you be friends with her? And as I said, Taylor does kind of relay to her, well, this is what happened. This is what put me in this position here. And Amy says, hey, tell me what to do. If you think you're a good person, I'm too scared. I can't think straight. She's reaching. She's on her at her wits end, and she's looking for guidance. And Taylor recognizes, heck, I can't barely manage my own life, and here's this powerful cape asking me to help her out. And that's where we first get Amy's willingness to do something to help in this effort to defeat the Nine. Skipping ahead a little bit, I wanted to bring up this one section that I really liked when, well, first thing that happened is they get Amy to keep the dogs from shrinking further. And then there's that point where Tattletale lays into Amy. Now, it's calculated, obviously. Tattletale is saying what Amy needs to hear in order to join the squad. I did like this quote. It says, Amy looked up at Tattletale wide-eyed. The look was utterly defenseless. I was put in mind, just for an instant, of just who Tattletale could have been. I had a mental image of her as a cult leader, tearing people down with an almost surgical precision and molding them into who she wanted them to be when they were emotionally and mentally unable to mount a defense. This really echoed with me, or stayed with me, and it echoes something, the points you made about how creepy she is, her power is. If Tattletale were what's the word I'm looking for? If she were a sociopath, if she were evil, she could have been Jim Jones on steroids.
Oh yeah. Yeah. She could have been the person behind the scenes of Cauldron, somebody who found the person who knew how to do stuff and then manipulated them and then manipulated people to protect them and manipulated other people. And I mean, she could have ruled the world. Thank goodness she does have some morals or some ethical standards.
You made a bit of a prediction that seemed to come true. Did you catch that in this chapter, the relay bugs?
I seem to remember a little bit about that, but I'm, even if I don't remember, I'll take credit for it.
Back in part 2 of our Arc 12 review, it was a response to a question from Reader, and you were wondering about Taylor. You speculated on Taylor possibly using a bug as a network node to help her control her swarm. And Panacea here creates these relay bugs for Taylor.
Yeah, that's right. Keith. I did predict that.
Well, maybe not exactly, but pretty darn close. And I wanted to give you credit for that.
Oh, thanks.
Very nice new addition to Taylor's to Skitter's utility kit.
Definitely, yeah. It's neat that once Amy gets on board, even if it is a little creepy the way it happens, she starts seeing other things and is willing to work with folks and brainstorm and try to figure things out and is able to make it happen. So that's pretty exciting to see.
And almost immediately upon deploying her relay bugs and getting extending her power, Taylor locates what is a moving truck, a moving van, driving erratically, trying to keep up with Siberian. She was angry with herself at first because she had been looking for people in static locations to be Siberian's real self. It was only after doing some hard thinking and assessing of the situation she realized, heck, this person is going to have to be mobile and that's where she spots the van.
Yeah, since it's a projection, it's probably like other powers. It's got a range. And so in order for it to be projected somewhere else, the person has got to be moving. And with how fast Siberian moves, it's got to be a vehicle that the person's in. So, but again, when you're getting bombarded left and right and you're still unstable mentally from stuff you've gone through, it's hard to be logical and think through those things. So I try to cut them all a little bit of slack.
Yeah, I mean, I think she should have cut herself some slack on that too, because she worked the problem. She methodically process of elimination and came to the realization, oh, this person probably is being mobile because of the range. So I don't think she needed to be that hard on herself.
Yeah, it's and I think they mentioned too that because of the way the devastation hit everything, a lot of people aren't driving anywhere.
Right.
So it's like, why would I think of that? Most people are walking or running around. So
exactly. So once they find once Skitter figures out the van is where Siberian's real self is, the team gets mounted up on the dogs. They head on out and begin their effort to try to do something to slow down or stop the Siberian. The projection, Siberian ends up on the van, extending her power to cover it. Trickster is teleporting grenades at it. Sundancer deploys her son. That was wild. Yeah, deploys her son, and it's like a city street wide, and drops it down into the middle of the road, and that's where the van ends up going into.
yeah, this was pretty amazing visually what was going on. This is like, one of the old Road Warrior battle scenes, or something from Fast and Furious or something, except
Yeah.
the chasers are on giant dogs instead of in a 69 Dodge Challenger. But it's pretty amazing scene I can picture going on. And then yeah, the sun thing is, you think, oh well, that's gonna work.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, it was a good move. It destroyed the street and fought, the van fell down in there. The Protectorate arrives. Legend and his team. We get some new capes. Cash, Ursa, something, Chariot, who we know is a coil plant. Glory Girl, Battery, and a couple of others. This is the first time that Glory Girl and Panacea have come face to face, and Victoria is still angry at her sister, very much so.
Well, and Amy's not too happy to see her either. She knows this is pretty bad for her. So, you really hope that they can just put it aside. But this is what happened was really bad. So,
Right. Yeah, we were hoping they could put it aside, but it doesn't look good, and that moves us on into chapter 4. Director Piggott wants to talk to Tattletale. That was kind of funny. Tattletale has an earbud and is already hacked into their secure uplink, and is like, "Hey, yo, Piggo, what's going on?"
yeah, I should have seen that one coming. I mean, that's Tattletale's thing, and
Right?
she has been hanging out with Coil, and that's his thing, and they got Chariot working on the inside. So
How do you like that back and forth between those two? We had Piggott in the previous interlude, and she fences pretty well with Tattletale here.
oh, I thought so. Yeah, being a parahuman, having superpowers isn't well, that's probably not the right way to say it. I was going to say isn't a magic wand, but in some cases it seems like it. It's not a perfect infinite genius power, right? I
Right.
mean, that's still tied to a person. And so Piggott is somebody who's really good at her job and
Mm-hmm.
is ruthless and has a lot of resources at her disposal. And so she's going to work it even harder probably than somebody who has superpowers because they're going to kind of start using those as a crutch a little bit and maybe not doing the legwork as much as somebody would. Similar to what you see in sports, where you have people who are just amazing natural athletes, but then you have other people who don't have those skills but work their tails off.
Oh, yes.
And a lot of times in a crisis, it's the hardworking person that ends up performing better because they've tried to think of every possible thing and plan for all sorts of stuff, whereas the person with the extraordinary abilities has just come to rely too much on them. And no matter how fast or how strong you are, you
You
can't
can't
do it
just,
all.
yeah, 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 exactly. The two sides end up sharing a lot of information. Tattletale tells Piggott about Siberian being a projection and her creator is a male. Piggott comes clean and tells the Undersiders that they're going to firebomb the area where Jack and Bonesaw are. Surprise, we're going to drop a bunch of napalm on the location where your other team members are.
Well, like I said, she's ruthless, and it's the nuke 'em from space idea.
Right.
So I can't blame her. This is extraordinary circumstance, and Brockton Bay is basically a pile of rubble in a swamp now. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's too bad, but it's kind of who's really going to notice? It's going to be a little bit worse in one area. So yeah, it's going to be a big bunch of fireworks, that's for sure.
Tattletale hangs up from Piggott. The Undersiders against Piggott's recommendation, but she realizes they're gonna go. They go to save Regent Imp and the rest of the squad that are there dealing assaulting Jack and company. This was a scary race against time kind of situation. Try to get there and save their teammates before things get out of hand. Amy tries one more time to reach out to Glory Girl. Glory Girl's not having any of it. And this is where Amy asked to be dropped off. And she's willing to help, but she's going to try to find some other way to help without putting herself into danger. One of the things that the team was short on was mobility. And Amy does something pretty creative.
Boy, I guess. I mean, once she starts trying to figure stuff out, she really goes to town. And I guess we've seen that with other folks and their powers too. Once they start trying to push the envelope a little bit, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
They get past one hurdle and it's like, oh wait, I could probably do this. I wonder if this would work. And then next thing you know, it's Katie bar the door. Who knows what's going to happen? So
yeah, the giant beetle comes swooping in. Geez, Taylor's really in all her glory here. Using, I think at one point she said a million spiders, as far as using them to drape silk over webbing over Crawler, and also caterpillars as well, getting them to lend their silk to the effort. The relay bugs allowed her to project forward enough to begin sending to write messages to Regent and Co. They're pinned down. They couldn't evacuate because of the fact that Crawler was out there. Ballistic was shooting projections into him, trying to keep him off balance. They were in a tough spot.
I was surprised how some of this stuff was actually working a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I gave Crawler too much credit, but and I think his own psyche or whatever kind of works against him a little bit, that he wants to absorb damage almost sometimes, or
Yeah.
see what happens. Will this really hurt? And so he's always kind of throttling it down a little bit. Otherwise, I think this would have just been they show up and there's a few smudges on the ground kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and Crawler walking away.
They do manage to get there in time to save the Regent and his group. The heroes take their effort to go after Jack and Bonesaw. Skitter is successful in pinning Crawler down, just giving themselves enough time to. Oh yeah, Gru yells at Skitter because she does once again a reckless thing when they're assessing the situation before the beetle shows up. They realize that they don't have enough
Getaway cars.
there you go. Thank you. They don't have enough getaway cars. Skitter jumps down off the dog, and Gru, or before that, she's like, "Hey, I got a plan," and Gru's like, "Don't you blankety blank do it." And she hops off the dog. I got a plan. You guys take off. And I'm sure Gru is just angry at once again Skitter doing something extremely reckless. I mean, they just got through talking about this the night before.
Yeah. I just have that scene from Jurassic Park in my head when Jeff Goldblum's character tries to, distract the T-Rex, and then
Jeez.
runs, throws the flashlight like the T-Rex is going to go for that. It's like, raw. And you're like, oh my gosh, what were you thinking? You're supposed to be the smart guy, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh no, that's not going to work. Yeah. And then you've got Crawler bellowing, "Run, little girl." Crawler's broken voice carried a rumble so low I could feel it. "I'll get free. I'll catch you. I'll hold you down and lick your skin until it melts."
Yeah, I have your scent and you cannot ever stop me. Oh, that's, at least with like the Terminators that you couldn't stop, they had to like pick up clues and stuff. They didn't have, they weren't
Yeah.
bloodhounds. They couldn't just detect molecules of your scent and follow you no matter what. That's messed up.
So then things happen pretty quickly after that. The beetle shows up. She hops on, manages to figure out how to get it to work using her power. The aircraft hauling the bomb she spots it coming. The heroes begin to evacuate the area. This new cape we haven't heard of, Cash, does his thing and creates these pocket dimensions where some of the other heroes go into. Clock Blocker freezes him and then himself, or his suit anyway. How'd you like this Cash person?
That's pretty cool. That's a neat trick, and I could see where there'd be a lot of ways you could use that. But I think Pigget gets some credit here that she put together a group that can all kind of, stay at ground zero and survive this. So that's pretty slick. Nice setup for that.
She's a pretty good tactician. I mean, I'm sure she got input from Legend and the people involved, but still, it was pretty good plan. And this moves us on into chapter 5, which will be the final chapter we'll cover this episode. The bombs drop. Skitter figures out how to keep the beetle from dropping her as it deals with the shock wave and the heat from the bomb. Skitter sees Weld doing battle with Mannequin and Crawler, or Mannequin at first. He's trying to defend the now frozen in stasis Clock Blocker and Cash.
That's tough. Yeah, because Clock Blocker's power is a bit random.
Right.
And so, yeah, if they end up under a pile of rubble, or underwater, or in a vat of acid, and then his thing wears off, then that's not good. So they need somebody there to to protect them and keep that from happening. Mannequin knows that, so he starts trying to make things ugly for when the clockblocker's power wears off.
Yeah, that took me my first read. That took me a little bit to figure out what
Yeah,
Mannequin was trying to accomplish at first.
same. Yeah,
And then it was like, oh wow, yeah, because of the random nature when clock blockers when the stasis runs out. Yeah, if this SUV and this convertible are piled on top of you, sorry, you're going to get smashed.
yeah, pretty brilliant plan on Mannequin's part. Just heap stuff on there, knowing that at some point the world's going to come crashing in on those folks.
He fought Weld pretty well using his quickness to counter against Weld's strength. And Weld was valiantly standing in there trying to protect his team. Skitter goes back, meets up with Tattletale and company, and grabs some grenades and a gun to go back to try to help Weld defend the heroes until they came out of the time stasis, which is courageous on her part.
Yeah, and it makes sense, something to distract. So in the speed versus power thing, if the person with the power is given a moment, and the speed person is distracted long enough, then the power will, it's the wrestler versus the boxer thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the wrestler ever gets his hands on the boxer, then it's over. And so Skitter's just trying to buy that time,
Yeah.
To give Weld that opening that he needs.
Crawler hears the commotion and begins moving over to the area. Mannequin instructs Crawler to spit his acid onto the capes, and he does so. He kind of laughs about it and spits some onto Cash. And Skitter, there's nothing she can do. All she can do is watch the currently frozen Cash as this caustic fluid bubbles and burns against him until he comes from stasis all of a sudden. And to her surprise, he calmly begins to remove the burning clothing, the melting clothing, and bringing the rest of the heroes back from that pocket dimension. He keeps his wits about him.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I guess that's something that, they probably train a little bit, or, they were aware that, all right, this is a risk when you're in this stasis mode and you're clock blocked or whatever, things are still going on around you. So, don't expect everything to be the same as it was when you went in, when you finally come back out again.
Skitter, when she was back collecting up ammo and supplies from the team, she tried to get Amy to do a few additional modifications to the Beetle. And this is where Amy says, no, I'm not helping you anymore. This was not a gift. This was just meant to help you get away. Don't look for me to do anything else. And Skitter calls her out on it. And Amy does do some additional modifications to help her with regards to controlling the bug. But I get the feeling that Amy's she's done at this point.
Amy's in a really tough spot. She doesn't have the offensive power. She doesn't have the ability to get away. She is a healer, although reluctant at times, and it's very draining, but she still has that try to fix things mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to try to make this better, it's, kind of what we ran into in World War II. It's like, well, all right, we've got to be allies with the Russians, because they're not as bad as the Nazis. So, but we're still not happy about being pals with the Russians. So eventually, yeah, you got to draw the line and just say, that's all I can do for you right now.
It took Skitter telling Amy that her sister was in danger to get her to do that much, and that's where she decided to add some additional navigational control to this giant bug for her. By the time Skitter gets back and tries to help out, that's when Cash begins pulling the rest of his teammates out of the pocket dimension. Glory Girl tries to go toe to toe with Crawler, and things go bad for her. She gave him the jab, and he ducked out of the way. He ducked out of the way of the kick, grabbed her, spat the bile on her, knocked her to the ground. And as much as when Tattletale shot her, her force field dropped, and that's when the caustic, the acid was able to get on Glory Girl's skin and begin to dissolve her, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Wow. That was tough to read. And yeah, people just keep going. It's looking like things might be okay. And then more and more people are getting knocked out of the fight. So, but Glory Girl looks to be in bad shape for sure.
And that's where we're gonna leave it for this episode. The battle's going very badly. Cash is down. Glory Girl is down. Skitter's out of bombs. Crawler's advancing, and the team is definitely on the back foot. So, and that brings us to the end of part 1. In part 2, we'll review chapters 6 through 9. So please join us for that. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of our channel. And whether you've been here since the beginning or only recently found us, thanks for being here. We hope you'll join us as we head into year 2 of our little project. Please keep the questions and comments coming. We love the engagement. And until next time, take care.
Wow, it's been a really fast year, a lot of fun. Really, again, appreciate you suggesting we get started with this, Keith, and really enjoyed it a lot. The one drawback I still struggle with is not being able to read ahead. It's still hard to stop when we're done with the section for that episode. But other than that, this has been a blast, and thanks everybody for listening. And we look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we'll hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more in the link down below. Catch you later.